Welcome back, everybody, to the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. I am Noah Hiles. She is Abby Schnable. And, Abby, it's here. March Madness is in full swing. The national tournament starts next week. When we're talking next week, it will be A, it'll be my birthday, and B, more importantly, it'll be the first official round. The first four in Dayton will be finished. We'll be in the midst of the chaos. It'll be so much fun, but I think it's equally fun what we're experiencing right now. You're in Chicago. I'm in Greensboro. I'm sharing a hotel room with our beat partner, Chris Carter. He's going to be seen, wandering around in the background throughout this whole show because we're in the thick of it. We're covering, in my opinion, the funnest week in college sports, and it's conference tournament week. How before we get started, how's Chicago going for you?
Chicago's great. As we all know, I went to school here, so I have tons of friends here. So it's been nice to just reconnect, see people, but also just get to camp out and watch some good basketball at some bars. And it's just crazy to think that we're in conference tournament weekend, and there are teams that have already punched their tickets, or on the other end that were on the bubble and likely no longer are. And it's just crazy how fast things are moving, because I feel like literally just yesterday I was starting this job, which was January, but even more so it feels like the season just started. And the fact that it's March and we're gonna have a bracket here in a couple days is just absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah, and Carter and I actually were talking before we set this show up. You might have the best Midwest resume of all time. You grew up in St. Louis, went to college in Chicago, and your first job out of college was in Wisconsin. You really know that area well. So it's fitting that you're in Big Ten country covering that tournament, because you're quite literally built for that.
Oh yeah, Big Ten basketball is just I've kind of flocked to it ever since I really started covering Wisconsin, and then after that, even when I moved to Pittsburgh, I was still paying attention to the Big Ten pretty closely, because it's like you said, the Midwest kind of roots in it. Yeah, we have teams on the East Coast, and yeah, we'll have teams on the West Coast here soon, but it's just been it's very much in line to what I've been watching my whole life. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to be here. I didn't go yesterday, but I plan on being at the tournament for most of today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, because we have Pitt natives in the tournament as well, and so covering kind of all of it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're going to talk Big Ten tournament, but first let's talk a little ACC. Pitt gets a win over Georgia Tech yesterday. I believe the final was, 89-81? Is that right? To everyone else in the audience here? Yeah, okay, 89-81. That's the 22nd win of the year. That likely puts the Panthers in the field of 68, avoids Dayton. Abby, what were your takeaways from this one? It wasn't the prettiest of victories. It was pretty in the first half, wasn't great early in the second half, but as it's done time and time again, this veteran group really kind of found a way to grind out a win.
Yeah, so like you said, wasn't pretty. I thought it was too close for comfort. Didn't like that. But at the same time, you got to think that this is the team that just dropped two straight. So they're kind of trying to kick off the rust and really just move forward. But that can be a little bit difficult, especially when you're playing at a neutral site, and with you're used to a very rigid schedule during the season, and now you're kind of being thrown for a loop. And so I wasn't surprised that there was a little hiccups. I think my biggest standouts were, I thought the offense was really good. Minus 3-pointers. I would have liked to see a few more 3-pointers, but I feel like this is pretty average. The only guy that hit them was Greg Elliott. So you want to see at least a few other guys in there just hit a couple, because that could really allow for defenses in the future to really target Greg Elliott, which is not what you want to do, especially when he has that pretty three. What I didn't like is I didn't really think the defense was very secure. Allowing Georgia Tech to shoot 45.5 from the field and 32% from 3-point range. I just thought those numbers were a little high for what isn't a really great Georgia Tech team. So I would have liked to see them clean that up a little bit more, and I'm sure they talked about that as well, just because you could kind of see they just didn't feel as connected as we've seen them in the past. And so those are mine. You were obviously there, so what things for you?
I mean, defense is a problem with this team. It just has been. If you look, it entered the tournament having lost 3 of its last 5, all 3 of those games being on the road. And I think the problems really started for Pitt in Blacksburg when it lost to Virginia Tech. And I do think that blueprint that we talked about on the show, how teams really were aggressive of defending that perimeter. Pitt has been a different team a little bit offensively as well since that game, where you're seeing them not take as many 3-point shots, and you're seeing guys not being able to really find a rhythm. You see maybe just 1 or 2 guys, like you pointed out, it was Greg Elliott yesterday. But yeah, it hasn't been that dominant outside presence for most of its games since then. That's the issues on the offensive end. But as far as offense goes, Pitt's still scoring. It's
Yeah.
still getting into the 80s. You're seeing guys, find a way to get the ball in the hoop. They really used Federico with his mismatches down low in the first half. Jamarius Burton really kind of took over the game at certain points. So did Nelly Cummings late. And Greg made the big 3 shots when needed. But the defense, yeah, it just continues to be a problem. You mentioned those percentages, Abby, and something that doesn't necessarily show up on the box score is Georgia Tech missed a lot of open looks that pretty much every team Pitt faces from here on out, both in the ACC and NCAA tournament. They're not going to miss those looks, especially they might miss one of them, but there were like 3 or 4, especially in the first half, where there were wide open threes and they just weren't falling. And when you play better competition, like we're going to see Pitt take on today with Duke, those shots are going to fall. And that's the concerning thing if you're Jeff Capel, in my opinion, is the defense continues to be a problem. You can't allow, a team like Georgia Tech, who only played like 6 guys. I think they had like 4 guys play 38 plus minutes or something like that. And for them to be still getting good looks after the final media break, that's a problem. So
Yeah, I just think that I didn't watch the stats while I was watching the game, just because I was doing other things while also watching the game, and it just didn't seem good for me to try and triple task.
yeah.
And so when I pulled up the box score, I thought the box score definitely makes it look like Pitt played better than they did. I mean, because those numbers though that they held Georgia Tech to aren't bad, and
No.
the fact that you've got 5 guys who scored in double digits is really good. But it just wasn't pretty, and it wasn't the Pitt team we know, and the Pitt team that has like beat Miami, beat Carolina, and so hopefully they're able to kind of shake off some of that dust for their matchup today, because it's gonna be a tough one.
It is, and let's talk about that real quick. Moving forward, the Panthers at 2:30 today. So there's probably some people who are watching this and they already know the result of it. But we're recording this Thursday morning. So the Panthers are about to take on number 21 Duke. This is a team that lost to Duke earlier in the season, even without its best guard. Jeremy Roach was injured for that one. Abby, just give me your keys for Pitt here. Who's a player that you think needs to have a big game for the Panthers to have a chance?
So first of all, I think Duke is one of the better teams in the country right now. I feel like they're playing
Yeah.
really solid basketball, and so
Mhm.
I'm anticipating them to really shut down Jamarius Burton. Like, I just see them really shutting him down, because I like how Duke does their defense, and they're pretty decent at scouting. So looking at guys that need to step up in the midst of what I think could be a shutdown of Jamarius Burton, is I really think you need to see a little bit more energy from Blake Hinson. I thought he played well yesterday, but he wasn't hitting shots that he typically does hit. And when your best player JB can get shut down, I mean, he doesn't often. Let's be real, but just with how Duke's playing right now, I could really see them eliminating him as a big scoring threat. So Blake Hinson, and I mean, I would love to see more from Nike as well. I mean, he only scored 5 points
Yeah.
yesterday. And Duke is a team that's going to tire you. They're going to stretch you thin, and so you need to see a little bit more from that ACC Six Man of the Year. He didn't. He had good minutes yesterday, but he didn't play to the level that earned him the title of Sixth Man of the Year. And so I think if you see Blake Hinson I mean, Blake Hinson still scored really well the other
Yeah.
day, but I think those two could be pretty key players, just because of how Duke is able to really defend and eliminate threats.
Yeah, the thing with Burton, like you said, and I do think they're going to key on him, but the thing with Jamarius is his game's so versatile,
Mm-hmm.
you can't really take away everything. If you
Yeah.
want to take him away as a scorer, that's fine. Like Pitt, that just means other guys are going to have to hit shots on the outside, and that actually sometimes plays into Pitt's favor, where it's like, okay, if you're going to key on me, I'm the best passer on the team as well, or at least top two between him and Nelly. So I'm able to set other people up if I'm
Yeah.
Jamarius Burton, if you're going to key on me defensively. But at the same time, if they key on guys like Hinson and Elliott and Nelly, Jamarius is able to get those isolation opportunities, but I don't think that we'll see a lot of those. I agree. I love how Duke kind of matches up against Pitt,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. The size that they have puts Pitt at a lot of disadvantages. But the guy that I'm looking for to have a big game is Blake Hinson. I think that they're going to have to ask Blake to do a lot defensively. I'm not sure who guards Filipowski. It might make sense to put Blake at the 5 and put him on Lively, who's less of a scoring threat on that end, and have Fetty as someone who's more Filipowski's size and is athletic enough to run with him to guard him. But that puts a lot of pressure on Blake to try to out rebound one of the best rebounders in the ACC and a first round pick in this upcoming draft as a center. So I'm not sure what they do with him defensively, but he's going to need to be sharp however he's utilized, because he's in that weird spot where Pitt knows how it's going to defend the backcourt, but what do you do as far as shutting down the Blue Devils' best scoring threat with Filipowski? And then he's also going to need to be, like you said, a better scorer. Pitt's going to need, in order for Pitt to win this game, it's going to need to shoot over 45% from 3, in my opinion. And that starts with Blake Hinson. I mean, Greg Elliott's the best three-point shooter on this team, but no one's going to take more three-point attempts than Blake Hinson. That's just how this team works, and he's got to be on. And this was a guy last time these two teams met, he and Federico both fell into foul trouble early on. Well, Blake fell into foul trouble early on, and Pitt was still able to find an offensive rhythm. But then once Fetty got into foul trouble, the game really fell apart. That's how Duke got 52 rebounds, I think 28 on the offensive end. And that things like that can't happen again. So,
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry. A benefit to Pitt's matchup with Filipowski is that, might be, I don't know, I'm not going to say controversial take, but I really feel like these past couple games, while not necessarily the best for the team as a whole, has been pretty good for the Diaz-Graham twins.
Yeah.
And so this is a pretty challenging opportunity. I wouldn't put them against him majority of the time, but in the situation where Fetty gets into a little bit of foul trouble, I feel like they could, if they're playing at the top of their level, match up like decently well with him just because of the height aspect, and they're pretty fast too. And so with how they've been playing recently, I don't know, I could see it being helpful. I'm not saying necessarily that we should stick Guillermo and Jorge on Filipowski the whole game, but I don't know. I just think they've been playing better basketball these last couple games, especially at a time where the team hasn't been necessarily great. But what I'm most looking forward to about this game is I'm going to keep track this time of how many times the announcers say Federico, because I swear they did not call him just Federico or Fetty the entire game yesterday. It was always Federico. And then they would say, I love his name. He has one of the best names. And I'm just like, you said that 2 minutes ago. So, that should be fun.
Yeah, the Diaz-Graham twins are interesting. They did not play well the first time against Duke. And I just think that, I mean, they have played well. But if you look against the teams that they really played well against, it's different to have a good game against Georgia Tech or Louisville compared to Duke might have the best front court in the country, in my opinion, just with the depth it has. And I don't know if I want them on Filipowski. I'd probably rather put them on Lively or Young, but both of those guys are just so much bigger than them, physically. I don't like that matchup down low on the block on either end of the court, but we're gonna see it. I mean, that's definitely another thing where Fetty's not gonna play 40 minutes, so Guillermo probably is gonna be the one that they call upon first. But I would expect to see both of them. So, Abby, before we move on to the Big Ten talk and Penn State and everything, give me your prediction. Just who do you think wins the ACC tournament?
See, I feel like and I hate to say it, but I feel like Duke's been playing, like we said, really, really, really good basketball as of late, and arguably one of the playing the best out of the ACC teams. So I could see them sneaking in and winning. I don't know if it's really a sneak in,
No,
but
they're the favorite to win the thing in Vegas.
see, I don't look at
Yeah.
the bets like you do.
Yeah.
But I could see Virginia doing it. I mean, I think Virginia's been just pretty consistent all year. And more or less, who's really consistent in basketball.
Right.
Um
Especially in this conference.
but like I feel like that's a team that could like just capitalize on these opportunities that they have. Um so I don't know. I think Duke is probably my pick, which sucks because that means your time in Greensboro is ending today. But what's good, even if Duke wins today, is I do think Pitt has really like solidified their tournament chances with their
Mhm.
win over Georgia Tech. So I guess I got to go with Duke. Unfortunately, is that your pick as well?
Yeah, it is. And that was my pick before the season's or the tournament started. I think that they're playing the best basketball in the ACC. I mean, they've won I think 6 straight coming into this, and that young group that they have, the 4 freshmen in the starting lineup, and then you have Whitehead coming off the bench as well. Uh, they're really talented, and now they have a full season under their belts. They're not ripe or young anymore. They've played in the North Carolina game twice. They played against Virginia. They played against Miami. And while some of those contests didn't go the way they wanted them to go, they have those experiences now. They've played in these big moments. They know what it's like to be a Duke player in February, and they're learning about it in March now. But when I just look at Duke, I think one or two things are going to happen with this team. It's either going to win the ACC tournament or it's going to lose to Pitt today and then go to the Final Four. Like that's just kind of the way this is going to play out. And if Duke doesn't win it, I think my second pick would be North Carolina. I just think it would be pure poetry how everyone would say the ACC sucks, and it sucks because the perception is Duke and North Carolina are having down years, and it would be like the cruelest of ironies if one of those blue bloods ended up just winning the league altogether at the end of the day. It's like no, like we're fine. And North Carolina looked good last night. I'm excited to see how Duke looks this afternoon. But we'll move on now from the ACC tournament. We'll talk some Big Ten now, Abby. Just a couple of questions I want to ask. We'll start with Penn State's matchup against Illinois today. One, what does Penn State need to achieve in this tournament to get into the field of 68? Is it kind of like Pitt was yesterday, where a win and pretty much guarantees them a spot in the field, or do they need to do a little bit more, or do they need to do nothing? Are they already in?
So the way I look at it right now is, Penn State was kind of on the almost out of tournament talks completely Monday of last week. And then, they get the win over Northwestern, who's almost guaranteed to be a tournament team at this point. And then they go and upset Maryland as well. And again, another guaranteed tournament team. And those are 2 huge wins at the end of the regular season to really just enhance your resume. And so now they're playing against Illinois, another guaranteed NCAA tournament team. And so I feel like because some of these other bubble teams aren't doing as well, so Wisconsin's probably out of the conversation completely now after losing to Ohio State yesterday. So that benefits Penn State. So I don't necessarily think they have to win today to get in. I think they'll be sweating a little bit more, but I feel like the teams that are around them aren't necessarily doing the best. Where that changes is when you get like a Duke run or a UNC run. UNC more than anything is because UNC is right there with Penn State, that they're kind of on the edge of things. So I think a win over Illinois State would kind of like, shake off the stress a little bit, but I don't think it's necessary. They'll just be a little bit more uncomfortable. I just think when you look at it, like the way I've always been told is that the committee likes to look at wins over guaranteed tournament teams. And I wrote it down, so I should find it, because Penn State has that resume of wins over guaranteed tournament teams. I mean, Maryland, Northwestern, Illinois twice, Indiana, and Iowa. I think Iowa's pretty safe at this point.
Yeah, I do too.
And so those are all, granted, they're all Big Ten, and most of those came at home, but just that's like so many more wins over guaranteed tournament teams than some of their opponents in the bubble. And so I think they've proved it, but I'm not a bracketologist, so I think a win today with a 6:30 p.m. tip would definitely guarantee them. But I don't know. I'm not a bracketologist, so I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, I think a win today keeps them out of Dayton. I think this team right now, if it loses, it's in Dayton.
Yeah.
And honestly, like everything that we've talked about with Penn State this entire year, that's kind of the team you always see in Dayton, right? That they were in it and then they were nowhere near it, and then they got hot enough just to sneak in at the end, right? And so and like this, if they lose to Illinois, a team that it's beat twice, like that's not a damning loss. So they're not going to get punished for it, even if they get blown out. So yeah, I think Penn State's probably a Dayton team, unless if it wins today, and then it's fine. So let's talk about the game today. Who's a player you're looking for? What's the number one key for the Nittany Lions?
Yeah, so I think the obvious thing is the obvious player is Jalen Pickett. I mean, he was just named second team All-American to Sporting News. So like obviously he's going to be a key player, and similar to Jamarius Burton is that he is a huge facilitator. So even if they take him away, it's honestly kind of interesting how similar Pitt and Penn State are when you look at like things. At least Pitt has a solid 5 though. Penn State doesn't necessarily have that. But so I feel like Jalen Pickett's going to have to not necessarily score if his teammates can pick him up around, again, similar to JB, but he just has to be on his game the rest of the areas. Defensively, he needs to be able to shut down Illinois. He needs to be able to get the ball to his teammates if he's not able to find a good shot. And he's been good at those things all year. I mean, you don't earn an All-American nod without that. And then, with Penn State, it always comes down to their three-point shooting. I mean, they're so reliant on their three-point shooting that more often than not, they are if they're not shooting well, they're not going to win. There are certain exemptions to that, but I mean, I think they just need to be shooting well, everyone kind of thing. But even if one person pops out and really steps up, that'd be great. But that's also not just this team. The two benefits is similar to Duke. Penn State is playing some of its best basketball right now. And so coming into this Illinois game, that's great. And the reason that this Illinois team wasn't able to shut down Penn State to either two times, I mean, they weren't close games. Like 93 to 81 and 74 to 59. It's not like it was a nail biter. And I think it comes down to Illinois is a pretty young, I'm not going to say inexperienced because that's not true, but they haven't played together for for a whole year. Like they just haven't been on the same roster for a whole year. And neither has this Penn State team, but what the Penn State team has is maturity. They're an old group. I mean, I think 3 or 4 of the guys on the team are older than me, and I'm 23. Same with Pitt. There's a couple guys in Pitt that are older than me. So, I mean, it's just as long as they are able to just execute what they did those other 2 times. I mean, you beat them at home and away. Those are good wins. And so if they can just, I mean, it's not going to be do what they did those first 2 times because likely Illinois is going to come out ready to do that. They're ready to shut that down. But if they can just play how they play, if they can just share the ball and hit threes, and when they're not, really penetrate and capitalize on the opportunities, they'll be fine. I mean, that's what they did against Maryland. Is people were triple teaming Jalen Pickett, which left Cameron Reuter open right underneath the basket twice. So, I mean, I think I'd pick them to win today, but at the same time, there's always that theory of playing someone 3 times in a season can be a little bit difficult.
All right, Abby, we're going to wrap up the show with some rapid fire questions, okay? I just want your answer, and then I'll give mine as well. Big Ten tournament champion.
Indiana.
Oh, wow. That's a heck of a pick. I think that's probably who I would go with as well. I like how the Hoosiers are playing. All right. seed for Pitt in the NCAA tournament.
See, I want to say 9, but I'm going to go with 10.
I think it's a 10 as well. West Virginia seed in the NCAA tournament.
Probably like an 11, 12.
I think the Mountaineers get a 10 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Penn State.
I'm again going to say an 11, 12.
I'll say the Nittany Lions get an 11. All right. Well, I want to ask here, what Pittsburgh area native has the best chance to win a conference championship this year? I know you did your research on Whitfield guys playing throughout the country in March Madness. Which former Yinzer has a chance for his team to win a conference tournament?
I was like, a conference tournament. Ethan Morton has already won a championship this season from Purdue. Yeah. But I think it's got to be Jalen Hood-Schifino. If I'm saying Indiana's going to win the whole thing, then that's the obvious pick. I mean, he just won Freshman of the Year. I'm writing a story about him, and very Big Ten centric right now. So I'd probably say him.
I'm gonna go with Adu Thiero at Kentucky. I like how the Cats are playing right now, and if Kentucky doesn't win the SEC, my backup pick would be Alabama, who has Kai Spears from Bishop Canevin. So a couple Whitfield guys down there in the South we got to give some love to. They're not just in the Big Ten, they're in the ACC as well. You got Nelly Cummings on Pitt, you got Puff Johnson on North Carolina. The Whitfields everywhere, Abby. You need to learn this. What else? I had one other rapid fire question. You know what? No, we'll wrap it up there.
Can you believe that, like, a couple weeks ago we were talking about how it kind of looked like Pitt was going to be the only team in the NCAA tournament, and now all 3 of them are looking likely?
Yeah, I mean, they're all, like, kind of on the same path, too. Like, they're all between 9 and 11 seeds. It's going to be an interesting March. Here, one last question. What city does Pitt get sent to? Your bold prediction. Where am I going to be covering a game on my birthday, Abby?
I think you're going to be back in Greensboro.
Oh, don't say that. I like Greensboro, but I want to go somewhere different. Come on. All right. Well, that's all we got for everyone today. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and follow along. We got Abby in Chicago, myself, and get on over here, buddy. Get on over here. My producer, he's actually not my producer. He just sets all this stuff up. Chris Carter here is with us. We've been hanging out in this hotel room together now for a couple of days, and hopefully we're here for a couple more and continue the good coverage here in Greensboro. But we've got all of your college hoops covered at postgazette.com. Check that out and keep checking out our YouTube as well. We'll have coverage here, and we'll see you next time. Next time we see you, it'll be the big time, March Madness. We'll see you then.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.